y'all. Welcome back to the Victor Mark Show. Listen, we're continuing a conversation we had yesterday between my friend Chad Robichaux and myself. Listen, we've discussed his background as a Marine, his incredible position as an MMA fighter, black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Today, we're going to touch base a little bit about his PTSD challenges that he's had. I can relate. And we're going to talk about his nonprofit, Mighty Oaks Foundation, and a couple of his books that have made a real impact in helping people. And then now how he's serving active duty and veterans as well. So if you want to learn more about Chad, just visit mightyoaksprograms.org. That's mightyoaksprograms.org. Now let's get into the show on this edition of, I'm calling it VMS, the Victor Mark Show. Hey, Chad, welcome back to the program, brother.
Good to be back on.
Listen, last time we talked about really a current issue of what's going on in Afghanistan and, your position. And I tell people, if you really want to know what's going on, what has happened, listen to yesterday's program. And you shared with us the active mission you're doing to get out of that country, your Terp and his wife and 6 children, who right now are having to move and groove and hide from the Taliban, which are actively hunting him. And, a couple of things that just, breaks our heart. One, she had to have what type of emergency surgery in somebody's house recently?
In the middle of all this, her appendix, emergency appendix deal, in the middle of all this.
I've had that done, so I can't imagine that ain't fun. And as you're on the run. And the second thing, you said if they capture them, they'll cut his head off, but they'll probably do it to his children first, so he experiences the pain.
Yeah, that's what the Taliban, is history of doing. They take a man and they'll make him observe his family being, beaten, tortured, maybe even raped in front of him, and then killed in front of him before they kill them.
Yeah. So, folks, you see why what we call the manifestation of evil in some groups, why they should be stopped, and why we do what we do as a military nation and intelligence groups to stop this spread of evil so it doesn't come here. But again, I encourage y'all to listen to yesterday's program so you can understand and know how to pray for this situation. So, Chad, today, you have an incredible background. You're the epitome of overachiever. I mean, if I looked it up, boom, here's a brother that has done above and beyond. I mean, you're a 1%er in the 1%ers. And I say that as a compliment to disciplines, sacrifice, and as we call it, embrace the suck. But you've accomplished what few men have. And honestly, what some movies are made out of, which you have a book that they're turning into a movie. But with all that said, you've struggled with post-traumatic stress. We've struggled with it. Kind of give our listening audience and those watching kind of an idea, because all they see is, super stud, beast mode. But tell them about the real challenges you've had.
Well, first of all, I'll say that, I do have a pretty lengthy resume and some great things, and I probably even consider myself overachiever. But when I look back at some of those things now, I don't see I see someone that was very discontent for a very long time. Yeah, that's what I see, and it kind of hurts to say that. I was pursuing achievement after achievement after achievement because something was missing inside of me that I couldn't really put my finger on, and that's so there's a lot of things I'm proud of, but then I look back at that and my motivation wasn't always something I was proud of.
Yeah, we call that being driven, right? We're driven, not led by God's Spirit, but those are those days we were driven.
Yeah, that hole I was trying to fill was a God-shaped hole that all those accolades and successes couldn't have been filled with anything but God. It took me a long journey to find that out, and part of that journey was answering that question you have is about dealing with PTSD. PTSD and veteran suicide is a big issue right now. After 20 years of war, we're seeing over 30% of our veterans who have served being diagnosed with PTSD, dealing with debilitating panic attacks and anxiety and depression, all these things which lead to and in the worst cases, suicide, which was still over 20 suicides every single day in a veteran community. And bases like Camp Pillen, combat veterans there, over 80% divorce rate. So a lot of problems that face our military. I certainly was not exempt to those things and faced those. My family and I faced those head on. When I came home from my 8th and last deployment, as I mentioned in your previous episode, I lost 15 friends over my times deploying, 10 of those being Afghans, probably the closest ones to me, aside from Foster Harrington, we served together for 10 years before he was killed on our first deployment. I came home diagnosed with PTSD, dealing with debilitating panic attacks, anger, frustration, hopelessness, and those things, begin to manifest before I actually came home. And I tried to hold it together for quite some time. I first started to notice some really uncontrollable frustration and anger. I'd come home and my family would be excited to see me, and it's shameful to say, but I'd act like a lunatic, throwing temper tantrums, punching holes in the wall, slamming doors, yelling at my wife and children like I was a Marine Corps drill instructor. And one time I came home from Afghanistan, and my little girl was so excited Dad's gonna be home for her birthday party, and I remember she's like celebrating. My daughter's like your typical stereotypical self-proclaimed princess for birthdays, like she's like she celebrates a half birthday. I didn't know such thing as a half birthday until I had a daughter. But my point being is birthday's a big deal to her, and Dad's gonna be home for her birthday, and she's very opinionated, and she didn't like the icing on her cake. Something super simple. She's even more opinionated now. She's 22. She didn't like the icing on her cake, and I just flipped out, and I grabbed a handful of my little girl's birthday cake and picked her cake up and threw it against the wall and destroyed my little girl's birthday. And that's just one example, unfortunately, of how I behaved all the time. I mean, my wife and I were talking just the other day about when they were in traffic, and I just came home from Afghanistan like a day or two, and she said something. My kid's in the back seat, my wife's driving, I'm in the passenger seat. And whatever she said, I just lost my mind. I started kicking in the dashboard. She tried to drive off, and because we're at an intersection, I'm trying to kick the shifter off so she can't drive. And my kids are screaming in the back seat, and I was just really out of control. And at that time, I really tried to justify my behavior and anger because I'm like, I have to be this way. I have to be violent. I have to be mean. I have to be able to do that to be my job, do this job. And she's trying to be like this strong woman of faith, and I'm like, I can't do that. I can't be a person of faith and be this Christian guy that you want me to be and be a warrior at the same time. I thought the two couldn't coexist.
Right.
And you and I know there's no bigger lie of the enemy than that for men, that you can't be masculine and be a Christian. You have to choose between your masculinity and Christianity or your faith. And it's just such a lie. But many young men
buy that lie.
Yeah, believe that. I mean, and I believe that. I believe that two couldn't coexist. Now I know there's no more stronger people in the battlefield of combat or life than men of God. But without knowing that, I intentionally removed God out of my life, left a giant hole in my heart that I filled with anger and rage and hate and bitterness, and darkness really took over me. And that anger started to manifest these physiological symptoms over time that I never thought would happen to me. My arms would go numb, my face would go numb, I feel like my throat was swelling shut. Sometimes I felt like I had 1,000-pound chest on my weight on my chest, and I couldn't breathe. When symptoms first started happening, I didn't want to talk to anyone because I knew that in this little special operations unit I was with, those guys would think I was weak because I would have thought the same thing if somebody told me that. I was like, the word that I would have thought. And I'm like, so that's what I thought they would think of me. So I wasn't gonna say anything, and I pushed it down, and I didn't want to go to mental health because I went to mental health, even though it would have been confidential. I was worried about my top secret clearance and being in the SCI SAP program. I'm gonna lose my clearance and for going to see mental health. So I kept it to myself, pushed it down. Those problems got much worse. I started having during really intense moments. I'd have moments where I felt like I was in a fog, I'd wake up out of a dream, and then I started having these during the really most intense times in Afghanistan, what's called disassociation, where your mind feels separate from your body, you're almost playing a video game, and I just the wheels started to fly off, and when I finally went on this last operation, this is after those Afghans were killed, which by the way, I feel like if I was hanging on by a thread when we lost those guys, that thread was broken. I went on one more operation, and I was when I came back, I felt like I woke up out of a dream. and I couldn't remember most of the most critical things. And I said, man, I'm not just putting myself in danger, I'm putting everybody in danger. And so I finally spoke up and said something, came home, was diagnosed with PTSD. I was dealing with debilitating panic attacks, and I was so ashamed because I felt like I worked my whole life to make it to this job, and now, making it in the Marine Corps is a big deal for me, and the recon, then the Force Recon, then to get the JSOC, and then I was part of this really kind of select team to go do this incredible, what I thought was the most incredible thing I could ever be doing with my life. And like if I played it was like if I played football my whole life and made it to NFL, which would never happen because I'm 5'4", but 5'3" really, but now, but you get the point, right?
Yeah, no, yeah.
I would have never worked my whole life to make it there, and I'm in the Super Bowl, the game-winning play, and I dropped the ball.
Right.
And so I was ashamed, and the level of panic attacks. I know you've experienced them before, but the only way I really know how to describe it to people, because sometimes I hear people say things like, I was in traffic the other day and I had a panic attack, and not minimizing someone else's experiences.
Right.
That's not what I'm talking about. Like for me, it's like, imagine being handcuffed to the bottom of a swimming pool and drowning. And
there you go.
And you
that's a good way to put it.
Like, how much panic would you be to get one breath of air, but you never drown, you never die, right. 24/7. This imminent, it's almost like you're on fire and you're trying to run to escape. You like somebody says stop, drop, and roll, and you stop, drop, and roll, and you're still on fire. So you get up and start running, like it just doesn't end, right? And
right, it's worse than reality. I've told people, being shot at, you get used to that. Being mortared, whatever, you're not having panic attacks during that. You're all focused and centered and like, oh, I'm breathing good. It's when we get home, we're trying to process it. But why? Why do people who we're talking military, but it could be any type of trauma. What is happening physiologically? Why does that happen?
Well, I went on a quest for information for this, and the place I landed the best answers were through the American Association of Christian Counselors. And I went to a weekend long course on PTSD combat care and counsel, and that wasn't enough for me. And so I went through the whole biblical counseling course to become a biblical counselor for PTSD care and counsel, just because I really want to know what had happened to me. I wanted to know the answer you asked, because I had asked my clinical psychologist that first diagnosed me with this. Went back and tracked him down. What happened to me? He couldn't give me an answer. And so what I discovered was is in contrast to what the clinical definitions would be, which is the body's normal response to an abnormal situation. So my body's responding normally. You could also say if the body's responding the way it was intended and designed to respond to abnormal situations, things we were never intended to see or do, things we were never intended to be a part of. If we are responding normally to that, then we're not disordered at all. Our body's doing exactly what it was created to do, and that's to survive. And our limbic system stores historical responses to traumatic events and gives us a physiological response to it to either, one, operate better for survival, or two, avoid us from getting in those situations again. They call it the 4 Fs: fight, flight, feed, or fornicate, right? You fight to survive, you feed to survive, you flight, run to survive, and you fornicate for the reproduction and survival of your species. These are all like primal instinctive properties. And you could train yourself through, like in your forward brain, you can do things through repetition over and over and over again. Bruce Lee, famous martial artist, says you learn it until you forget it. You do it over and over and over again until it goes in your limbic system. You never think about it, you just do it. But the other way to put something in your limbic system is through one single traumatic event. The human body is incredible. The way God designed us is incredible. We experience one traumatic event, and it's your limbic system stores this event to protect you from ever experiencing it again. If you were driving down, Jalalabad Road in Badakhut, Afghanistan, and you pass, you and your 4 friends are in a Humvee, and you pass a little red Corolla and it explodes, and all your friends die, and now 5 years later you're back home and you're driving down Main Street in Balesville, Iowa somewhere, and you pass a little red Corolla, and all of a sudden your heart starts to beat fast. You have trouble breathing. Your blood comes out of your limbs into your vital organs. You're not disordered. Your body's doing exactly what it was designed to do. And if you medicate yourself with 50 pills a day, which we're seeing, 43 is the most I've seen. We have an average of 20 pills a day for the guys that come to Mighty Oaks. If you medicate yourself that way, you're never going to heal, because the body has an incredible way to recalibrate. So you get drive past that, get past that panic attack, and recognize your brain recognizes that that wasn't a threat. That little red Corolla didn't explode. You do it again and again. The body has an incredible way of recalibrating. Now, I'm not against medications. You and I both know that
Yep.
there's time and place for medications.
There's a place for it.
But if medication's only part of your plan, it's a terrible plan. And so medications for me, when I first came home, made me feel like I was going to die. I felt like the medications was going to kill me. I was terrified of them.
Yeah. Yeah, I've been through it as well. What you just explained in such a concise, effective way has changed the perception of people. I'm telling you, tens of thousands right now. They just listen to Watch Sits and they're going, I didn't know that's what that was really all about. And thank you for sharing that. And now you've taken this a whole step further with your foundation and organization ministry to help guys who are struggling in different ways. But you have an incredible, folks, I can say this with complete certainty, one of the highest success rates of helping people work through very bad challenges and issues and PTSD, saving marriages, and preventing people from killing themselves. Tell us about your organization, because now people are going to want to know.
Yeah. Well, you have a guy there right now. I think you sent the guy that's there right at one of our
Yeah.
meetings.
Oh, yeah. We sent an SF doc. Good friend.
So I don't know how much time we have left, but I got to tell you how we got there to start it.
Oh, you're good.
So when I came home, I tried everything. I tried the pills. I tried the counseling. I tried the MMA and jiu-jitsu. During my time home is when I dove into that and won my world title and had a lot of success there. And but none of those things worked. And it ended up with me separating from my family, in relationships with other women, and finding myself in a position to come to this conclusion that my family would be sad without me, but they'd be better off. I thought the damage I caused to my wife, my children, they'll be sad without me, but they'll be better off. And that same hopeless thought finds a home in the hearts of 20 plus veterans every single day. And I made a decision I was to take my life. I would sit in my closet of my apartment with my Glock 22 pistol, a 40 caliber pistol, and I put my family pictures on the floor around me and try to build up the courage to pull that trigger. And the one thing that made me pump the brakes every time is every time I put that gun to my head, and I'd even take the time to get the angle right because I didn't want it to be fast and I'm thinking through that detail. But every time that gun would touch my head, I believe God gave me this vision that I would say, like, who's going to find me? Somebody's going to hear the gunshot. I'm going to be missing.
Oh, wow.
Somebody's going to find me. And I'd see that play out. And the only other person who had a key in my apartment at the time was my son, Hunter. And so that was enough to pump the brakes. But I was in such a dark place. I'd be back at it again the next day and trying to build up the courage to do that final, really that permanent solution to very temporary problems. And it was one of those moments that I heard a knock on my door. I wasn't going to answer it, but then my wife announced herself, and when she did, went to the door. We got this big argument. I don't know what we're arguing about. I know I was just mad that she was there. Get this. I was mad that she was there interrupting me from killing myself. So irritated by her. I'm like, what are you doing here? Like, why are you here? Like, just yelling at her. In the middle of this argument, she asked me, how can I do everything she saw me do in the military? We met when we were 17. We just celebrated our 26.
Oh, so, congrats.
Thank you. In Jamaica. It was awesome.
I know. I liked the post. I was like, yeah, buddy, get it.
So, she's like, how could you do everything you did in the military? She saw me become a recon Marine, which, 80% attrition rate. She saw me go through all these schools and deployment workups and all the stuff we do in Afghanistan, train for these MMA fights and cut 30 pounds. Like, I'm not a big guy. Look like I'm a Holocaust victim, bones on my face, the discipline she saw in all those things. She's like, how can you do all of that? And when it comes to your family, you'll quit. There's no soul cutting word to me than to be called a quitter. And for me in that moment, I'm kind of radical decision maker. And I'm like, yeah, she's right. I've been successful professionally, all those things you said when you introduced me, but it came to the most important things: being a husband, being a father, being a young 17-year-old kid that raised his hand and said, I'm going to do something important in my life. I quit all those things, including my will to live. And so I made a radical decision at that moment that I was going to get better. I knew I couldn't do it alone, because we can't do it alone and we don't have to do it alone. And I knew I couldn't do it with the people I surrounded myself by, because I had systematically surrounded myself by everybody who told me what I wanted to hear and not what I needed to hear. And she introduced me to a man at this church she was going to. And his name's Steve Toth. And I remember sitting across from him and I'm telling him how I had a 5-paragraph order of how I was going to fix my life. And I'm real proud of it, and smugly slid it over to him, hey, check this out, show it to my wife because we're trying to win her back. And and he looked at that paper, he slid it back over to me and told me I was going to fail. And I remember like being like, "Who is this jerk?" But he said, "Chad, like if this plan doesn't have anything to do with your relationship with God, I'm not going to waste your time. I'm not going to let you waste mine."
Wow.
And that was exactly what I needed to hear. Because, like I said, I had tried everything. And in that moment, I made a decision to surrender my life to Christ. And Steve mentored me for an entire year of biblical living after that. And what I discovered through that mentorship was that all these bad things that happened to me in my childhood, you and I shared the childhood of physical abuse and things that happened, losing friends in Afghanistan, and all these things that happened, as bad as those things were, those things didn't lead me to be in a closet with a pistol in my hand. What led me there were the choices that I made in response to those things. And I never lost control of the ability to choose. And now this guy, Steve, is mentoring me in biblical living and how to choose differently in spite of what happened. I can't change what happened to me. Like the past happened. How do I respond to it moving forward? And I started responding intentionally in a biblical way to the hardships of my life. And what I discovered was restoration in my brokenness, in my family. I found hope for the first time, and ultimately, I found what I sought my whole life, and that's purpose. And we were created that purpose. We have to have purpose. You wonder why veterans kill themselves? It's not because what we've seen or did. It's because we had an important mission, we had a purpose, and then we woke up and that was gone. We have to have purpose. One of my favorite quotes is Mark Twain. Right? Mark Twain says, "The two most important days in a person's life is the day that they're born and the day that they find out why." And when Steve Toth introduced me to life I was created to live, I feel like I found out the why, and it was to share what I discovered with other warriors doing the same thing. It was like if I was dying of cancer and he gave me the cure, I didn't want to share it. I felt obligated to share it. And God put a deep burden on my heart to share that with others. And so we weren't even ready. Me and my wife were still bleeding as a couple, but we felt a need to be obedient to that burden that God put in our heart. And we started Mighty Oaks Foundation. And over the last 10 years, we've done three different things. We've done resiliency programs where I go to bases around the world and speak to active duty troops. I just found out this week that we just broke 250,000 active duty troops that I've spoken to at bases around the world, and given away about 150,000 copies of the books that I've written. And we get so many requests for these resiliency events. I go to Marine Corps boot camp every quarter, and the Marine Corps lets me speak to them on spiritual resiliency. And out of the 4 pillars of resiliency, I get to speak on spiritual resiliency and give them a book called Path to Resiliency that helps them build their foundation of spiritual.
Great book. Yep, great book.
And then we do a recovery program, so a legacy program. We're doing 35 one-week camps a year, followed on by an aftercare program, which is biblical mentoring and aftercare for people that are really struggling and need that intensive. And we've had 4,000 graduates from that in the last 10 years, but we're doing about 1,000 a year now. And by the way, that's active duty, veterans, spouses, and first responders, and we pay for everything, including travel. And we do about $3.5 million a year in programming. And pay for everything. A grateful nation of people just really support us doing that. And then the last thing we do, and you and I have been involved in this together, is we take the successes that we've had with faith-based programs and work and do advocacy work in D.C. to change policy. And I've been able to testify before Congress, help pass some Senate bills, and work with the last presidential administration to get faith-based programs back in the VA and DoD, including an executive order. And so those are the things that, just some of the things that we've been doing at Mighty Oaks Foundation the last 10 years.
Folks, listen, obviously you can hear articulate, and he's a smarty pants. I'm just going to say it. He's an educated, articulate, smarty pants. Brother, you are, in my opinion, this is my opinion, we're friends, but I'm talking about from a professional standpoint. You're probably one of the, if not the most effective leader in this realm of what you just spoke about. And folks, I send people to him, to his camps. He mentioned it, that we've got an SF doc there right now who's active duty. And I said, hey, he was struggling. He contacted me. He said, man, bad dark thoughts. I said, you got to, let me get you in. So folks, they pay for it. So there's 2 things that's needed. You can have all the money in the world, but if you're not praying for an organization like Mighty Oaks, it's a spiritual battle. So I'm telling you, sign up for their email. I get it. And pray for things that they need prayer for. And another thing is obviously support them. It's, we run about this. I think we run kind of parallel budgets and whatnot. And you know, it was something funny you mentioned one time when we were hanging out. You're like, man, because we're responsible. We had these organizations, and ultimately we're responsible for everything. But when you start talking finances, it's like watching a pool fill up with water, right? And then you got to do it again. And we take that responsibility, but we see God's faithfulness. And I'll just say this, folks: if you want to get behind an organization helping veterans and active duty, this is it. There's no shenanigans going on behind the scenes. There's no fat pocketed people. It's like ours. I had people, people ask me, well, man, you make $1 million. I said, me make $1 million. I said, look here, I've turned $1 million job down. I said, I drive a truck and live on a dirt road. Knock it off. We're doing the real deal. We're not in this for money. There's other things we could be doing. And our families are invested as well, where we know it's a mission from God. So I want to encourage people to go to mightyoaksprograms.org, sign up for the newsletter. And if God puts it on your heart, you monthly supporters doesn't hurt y'all's feelings, right?
Man, what's awesome about monthly supporters? It just helps you build the plan. You know that from what from
Yep.
supporting ATP, you can plan. Even our bigger donors, like the people that write big checks, and it's just knowing what's coming next. I mean, like
yes,
when they give quarterly or something like that, it's really nice to know what's coming because we can plan. Because I mean, the influx of applications that have been coming to us,
it's only going to it's nonstop.
It's nonstop, yeah. And so,
yeah, I mean, I'd like to see y'all double what you're doing, and I'm pretty excited for the future, and I'm glad that God has your hand to the plow doing that, brother. And I'm glad that we've locked arms.
Yes, it's been a great partnership. We've been partnered together, and for your listeners, you guys, obviously you're listening. Victor's the real deal, and honestly, like, when I have to pick up the phone and call somebody, you're one of the first people I'll call. And either I'm struggling personally, or we bounce advice.
Vice versa.
Yeah, we support each other, and I love that ministry leaders, like us, could do that, and have each other do that, and not be in this competitive spirit towards each other, which is unfortunate, but exists. And not in the nonprofit world, but the ministry world.
Yep. Yep. Hey, before we close, we got to talk about your book. This came out last year. Tell us about this book and how people can get it. I mean, I've read it. It's unreal. If you read the first 2 paragraphs, you're hooked. I mean, I couldn't believe how well it is written, but it is like sitting down talking to you, and it keeps you on the edge of your seat.
You can't believe a guy from Louisiana. I can't believe a guy from Louisiana read a book. I wrote one.
It's true.
But
miracles.
It did really well. We hit #1 bestseller on Amazon in I think in 8 categories. So it was like
wow.
And President Trump endorsed it. As General Boykin wrote the foreword to it. Alan West, Sergeant Major of the Marine Corps, it's in the Commandant's reading list. We did really well with it, but one of the things that it just really is personal stories from Afghanistan and biblical stories that helped me move forward in my life, and I want to share it with others. We have a 10-week study in the back that's free as a video study tied to it for free if you can buy the book, and then it's that 10-week workbook goes together. And the cool thing about this book, it's scary to me, but it's kind of cool. They're making a motion picture film out of it.
Yes. So tell them how they can get it.
You get it anywhere you can buy books. You can go to mightyoaksprograms.org and buy it. You can go to Amazon, Barnes & Noble, anywhere you can buy books. You can find An Unfair Advantage is the title.
Unfair Advantage, The Unfair Advantage by Chad Robichaux. Brother, thank you. And you know what? We always ask our guests 2 final questions. And here they are. The first one's based on perception, but me and your buds, you have an unfair advantage on this question, but you have to answer it. What is your perception? Because people base and kind of live things off of perceptions. What's your perception of the ministry and Eileen and I and what we do?
I think what you guys do is it's life-changing for so many people, because you're able to the stuff you guys do is not stuff that most church ministries could just say, hey, our church is gonna go out and do this. You guys do things that are in places that people can't go. You go to places that people won't go. And so for people that have hearts for the things that you do, you guys are the hands and feet to that.
Oh,
And
man, thank you.
I mean, a
Thank
lot of
you.
people share the heart for the things you guys have a burden for, but they can't physically do it. And you know, God calls some people to actually be the hands and get in there and do it, and other people to support. And so, you know, that's when I see you guys. That's what I see.
Thank you. Just a little caveat to that. You know, we just got back from Iraq, and we're in a fob with a small team of a unit that, you know, doesn't exist, and we were able to do training and then pray for them. And then next thing you know, we're in Baghdad. Next thing you know, we're in Suli, and next thing you know, we're in Erbil and Dohuk. And I'm going. Right now, we're prepping for 3 countries to go to a 4-man team. And on that team, we had 2 former operators out of the Delta. So God has, you know, God has put together this unique ministry that will continue to press forward. But we're heading to Central and South America to find where women and children are missing and being captured or killed because of the rush to the border, which they're allowing them in. And the sad thing is, if they would shut that border, it would protect so many lives of what's happening that nobody knows about. So I'll give you an update on that and appreciate your prayers. Last question. We're all going to die. It is part of the circle of life. So what happens to Chad Robichaux when he closes his eyes for the last time as a great-great-grandpa with tons of children around him? What happens to you, and why do you believe it?
I solely believe in the sacrifice that Jesus made on that cross. You know that sacrifice, regardless of how much of a bonehead I've been in my life, the fact that I choose to be in a relationship with Him and accept what He did for me on that cross will secure me an eternity in heaven. Now, when I get to heaven, I've just really studied. I don't know what it looks like, but I sure hope I'm not just floating around on some cloud. And I sure hope God will give me a battle axe and sit me down.
Thank you.
To be
Thank you.
I hope we all get a job and I get to be a demon slayer or something like that.
Oh yeah, yeah.
He glory and spirit inside me for something. But
Yep.
I do know I'm going to heaven. I rest assured in that. So I really have come to understand what Jesus did for me, and it gives me that something that I don't ever deserve, never did deserve, and never will deserve, and that Jesus chose to do that for me. But God, I hope He uses me to do something.
Yeah. And I hear this regularly from warriors. They're like, well, I hope I get commissioned to some battle somewhere and I'm able to lop, hurt bad guys' feelings, demons. So, hey, on that note, how does a person, you said, I have an assurance. How does somebody listening, how can they actually feel that assurance?
Well, I mean, first of all, we have to come there ourselves and understand that we are sinners. It doesn't matter how good or bad you think you are, and how much good you've done in life. We are sinners. We're born sinners. We have sin in our heart. We're selfish creations, and we fall short every single day, and we can never reconcile that on the eternal level. And so God had a plan for our salvation, and He sent Jesus to come down and live in human flesh on this earth, and Jesus' life ended with Him choosing to willfully die on a cross as a sacrifice for the sins of all mankind, and that the understanding of that, the acceptance of that, tied with an acceptance of a relationship with Him, is the single decision that has to be made to secure your eternity and have that assurance, the same assurance that I feel I have. Without that, there is no shortcuts. There is no other way. But it's as difficult as that and as simple as that.
Love it. Love it. Hey, brother, thanks for sharing that. Thanks for sharing your life, heart, ministry, your background. Our audience is a grateful bunch, and I'm sure many will be responding. They can follow you on social media. They can go to your website. Again, mightyoaksprograms.org, and I recommend do what I've done. Sign up for his newsletter. They're not pelting you with nonsense. It's good stuff. And once you see what they do and the lives are changing, support them monthly. help them plan so that next year we can do double the amount of camps and reach double the amount of people who need help struggling with PTSD. And brother, thank you again. Love you, man. Hugs to the family. And we will catch up to you soon.
Love you guys. Always praying for you, man. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Vice versa. Hey, folks. Well, again, what a great second day on the broadcast. If you missed the first, go back. You've got to hear it. It's real time what's happening right now in Afghanistan, and a warrior's perspective and a call to action to help someone that's helped him and kept him alive, a hero that we want to see he and his family saved, rescued, and got out of that country before the Taliban catches and kills them. So wherever you are, whatever you're doing, man, do it for the glory of God. Now go get it done.